Welcome to another edition of Nutmeg Chatter Presents The Claw's Corner. Today's guest is a singer, musician, author, voice actor, and filmmaker. Her latest novel is Everest Goes to Space. Please welcome to the show the multi-talented Tiffy McKay.
Hi, Rich. Thank you for having us.
Oh.
Having me.
Yes. I didn't realize you brought a friend.
I'm a Gemini, so I always have a friend.
I'm a Leo. I have no friends. But anyway, I want to start with your latest novel. I guess it's not released yet. It's called Everest Goes to Space.
So this one's actually a picture book. I have not written my first novel per se, although I have a lot in the bank waiting to be written. But I wanted to start with children's books. And the reason behind that is kind of because I was a remedial reader as a child, and I desperately want to make more stories for kids like me.
So are you the illustrator as well?
Not on this one. This one was illustrated by Kelly Bossity. She's actually, I think she's a local from Torrington also.
So how did you get started with this?
After I published my first book, For Love of Dying, which is a spiritual book based on experiences surrounding death and losing people and learning how to heal from that, I really wanted to do a 180 and focus on life. And I kind of needed that at that point. So I started writing different ideas for a bilingual book. And originally, the elephant, the main character, had no name, and it was just animals and vehicles, and it was purely just for language originally. I was learning memory mastery and trying to figure out new ways to link words in my mind to remember them, and that involves creating very, very silly pictures. So things like the elephant drives the car, and picturing an elephant in, for instance, a BMW or a beetle.
Mm-hmm. So what do? You write the story first, then you send it off to the illustrator, then she comes back, or do you have an idea and then she draws the pictures?
So it was a little bit of back and forth. We kind of stumbled on each other in the first place, and that sort of happened with both of my my translators also for the book. And together, at first I tried to just give her the book, and she's only illustrated one other book before this, so there was a lot of just back and forth seeing what I was looking for, and I didn't really have any idea what I was looking for. But it was interesting because the way she drew Everest and the way she drew each of these characters, he turned into something that I never would have pictured by myself. So the character really became like a coupled kind of invention.
And did that affect the story?
Drastically. She was actually illustrating the original book, Animals and Vehicles, when I realized there's no actual story here. It's just a bunch of words and sentences. And it was really boring, I realized. And I was like, I don't think this is what we want to publish. So I rewrote the book over and over and over again, based on the little bit of conflict that I wedged into the middle, which happened to be space. So I think I rewrote about 10 times before we actually had something that felt workable. And I gave her the new book. I felt so bad. This was like 6 months in, too. And she was creating these beautiful landscapes. And then I gave her a book that happens in space. So
back to the drawing board, literally.
Literally. So it took us 2.5 years to get the illustration work done, partly because we restarted.
Yeah, but see, sometimes perfection takes time. There's really no limit unless you're with a publishing company, which we're going to talk about later, where you can find the book. So when is the book going to be released?
So we're aiming for, I want to say February release for this book. We have an Indiegogo pre-launch going right now that you can find more information on it at tinyurl.com/S for share, and capital E for Everest.
All right. Well, I'm definitely going to have to check that out. You know what I love about your books is that it's written in 4 different languages. It's written in English, Spanish, French, and German. What is the genesis of that?
Well, again, I originally wanted to explore language, and I just happened to know a little bit of Spanish, much more French, and I was playing with Duolingo and learning German. And so to me, those seem to be the natural ones that I should look into. Also turns out that right now, if you publish an audiobook, those are the only 4 languages available right now for Audible.
Oh, really? So do you actually write the book in those languages, or do you send it to somebody else and they put it in audio form?
So I wrote them out in English, and each translator... It's kind of interesting because normally when you send something to a translator, you're not putting both languages in the same book. So it doesn't have to look like an exact translation usually. And you, especially to get the flavor of it and everything too, you wouldn't normally do that. But because this is also for learning, we worked very hard back and forth as translator and writer to choose which words would both teach language as well as carry the same meaning. So there were times actually where some of the English I changed in each of the books. So each book is not identical.
Now, when you start writing, I'm curious. I've written one book myself, and the reason I bring that up is because I have a process. And I know every other writer has a different process, or whatever works for them. Do you write in long form, like longhand? And I love to go to a coffee shop with a book and just start writing, or do you just have a method? I'm going to write from 2 to 4 every day. Doesn't matter if I'm inspired or not. I don't care if I can't think of anything to say. I'm just going to put words on the paper. Is that more you, or are you just do you write down as you when you're inspired?
So I'm inspired constantly. There are lots of bits and pieces of the entire world that he comes from. So I'm perpetually taking out my phone and jotting down notes in that. But when I do go to write an actual book, I do tend to write it out on paper. And sometimes because I feel I did this on purpose because I'm a slow reader. I don't know if I'm a slow writer or not because I haven't written enough to know that. But I chose kids' books because I could sit down and rewrite a book 10 times in a row.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big deal because we know as writers that most of the writing happens during the rewrite or the editing.
Well, that's with me. I just go through the first draft completely, then finish it because most of it you're gonna get rid of in the second draft, and then the third draft you look at that, you're like, well, let me touch this up a little bit. Then by the fourth or fifth, that's when this is what I wanted.
Yes.
So with the first draft, just write down any idea that you have in your head, and if I have a writer's block, I'll just write something down that might propel the character into a completely different way that I never even thought of. So yeah, that works. But I want to get back to some of you mentioned the book before, and it sounds very interesting. I want to learn more about this. It was called For the Love of Dying.
For Love of Dying. Yeah. That was a book. That was my first book. I wrote it. I had it edited by someone else, and then I had it double-checked by another editor, too. So I used 2 editors because I was self-publishing it, and I wanted to make sure that it was as polished as humanly possible. And that one's still up on Amazon, but that was hard. That took me 2 years to write, and it was as if I couldn't write anything else until I got that done. Like there were experiences and stories that had to come out. They were literally like roadblocks standing in my way because I was taking creative writing classes and everything, and I could not do stories until I finished.
So it was more therapeutic for you.
Oh God, writing has always been my therapy ever since I discovered poetry when I was a preteen.
So this is like a diary that you want everybody to read.
Oh God. I'm not even sure I could say that. I wasn't sure who was going to read it or if they would want to read something about this, but it felt like it had to be done.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter what I wanted. And it's there for if somebody needs it, particularly if they're grieving and are just struggling with getting through it.
All right. Well, we are speaking with Tiffy McKay. Nutmeg Chatter presents the Claus Corner. We'll be back with Tiffy McKay right after this. And we are back with Nutmeg Chatter Presents the Claus Corner. I have been speaking with the multi-talented singer, musician, author, voiceover actor, and filmmaker Tiffy McKay. Tiffy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, so we spoke about a couple of your books, and you mentioned that they were published and self-published. I wanted to get right into Awkward Pause Publishing.
Yes, so that's the kids division of Forge Machine Publications. After publishing my first book as an indie author, I realized that there's no reason not to create a publishing company. And as I was working with my illustrator to get our first kids book out, I started finding more and more people who write books. And one of the people that I knew had been working on a book a couple years beforehand, his name is Grant Uchida. He's actually a YouTuber out in Hawaii. And I kind of just sent him a message asking him, hey, how's that kids book coming along? And do you need to know anything? Do you want to, I'm creating a publishing company and I'm working on my own right now. And just to see where he was at. And turned out that he was like, can you just publish this for me? Yes.
Well, now that you mention it, Tiffany, Tiffy, I have a book that I might need some publishing. No. So, do you have a certain type of author that you publish? Like, is it all educational? Is it all children's books, or do you publish different types of authors of different genres? We're
going to be publishing all genres eventually. Yeah. I wanted to focus in on the kids division to get that built up and started first. As a writer myself, I don't have a particular area that I love writing in. I've written in poetry, I've written lyrics, I've written kids books, I've written chapter books. And eventually I have like a 3-part mystery book that I need to write. And so we'll be publishing all of those, and we'll just create different divisions based on like age groups. So Awkward Pause Publishing is super fun though for like our first division to be really getting off the ground. And I'm just really enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you, how many authors do you currently have on Awkward Pause Publishing?
So far, we have myself and Grant. I frequently have people say, oh, I wrote a book, or, oh, I'm in the middle of writing a book. And it's always interesting to see, like, who rises to the top and who's already, like, finishing. Because it's interesting, once you've finished a book, like, once you've finished writing a book, and especially if somebody has published already, it's a completely different ballgame after that. Like, you realize what you're capable of doing.
Yeah.
That you didn't know before.
It is a good feeling. But you're making a great point, because publishing and writing the book is just the first part.
Yes.
Then you have to get out there and spread the word and market the book.
Marketing,
and that's a whole other thing.
It really is. It's an entire job by itself.
Yeah. Now, does your publishing company help with that?
Oh, yes. Actually, my bachelor's degree is in marketing. So this is another reason why I took the publishing route as a publisher. So, but even then, like, having a degree in marketing is like the beginning. It's like having stepping stones to work from so that you understand the basics. But this is learning an entire industry, and every industry is a little bit different for marketing.
Well, as I mentioned before, you are multi-talented. You have so many talents, and you and I work on the show Nutmeg Junction together. It's an all-original show that pays homage to the old-time radio serials such as The Shadow. I want to know how you became involved with that show.
Oh, my. So Kurt Boucher, fellow voice actor for the Doctor Who parody, Professor A, he's someone that I met actually on YouTube. And we got together to do a video. First time meeting a stranger from the internet.
What can possibly go wrong?
I sent off an address to my best friend and said, if I don't turn up, this is where my last known location was. But we actually turned out to be great friends. And
Yeah, he's a great guy. He's very talented as well.
oh, yeah. And he's kind of always been a great inspiration to just go ahead and try things, even though I don't believe I'll be good at it. And so one day he was like, we really need somebody for this one script. Can you just try it? Give it a try.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, if you need someone, okay. And Joe sent me this script, and he's like, so it's a Doctor Who parody. And I'm like, oh, okay, you have my attention. I love space. I love sci-fi. And as I'm reading it, I was also thinking to myself, I'm like, I don't think I can do this without the British accent. Because in my head, I can't hear it in an American accent. And I was like, is it okay if I do a slight British accent? And I can't guarantee it'll work. And the rest is history.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up because they are so open. Nutmeg Junction, Joe Timothy Quirk, who produces, writes, directs, he has such a great outlook, and so do you. Is like he welcomes everybody, gives everybody a chance, lets their voice show. And I was reading some of your quotes on your blog that you write, and I love this. It said, if you relentlessly pursue it, you cannot fail. Failure means that you just gave up too quickly. And I think that when you just mentioned your story, that proves that if you could have said, you know what, I can't get this British accent down, I'm out of here. But you stuck it out, and you're great.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, I think no matter what, if you keep trying, you're bound to even just accidentally succeed, as long as you don't give up. Because there's been so many times in my life that I remember giving up too soon and not knowing that I could have done it. And so it's not easy living life, going out there every day, not knowing if you're going to succeed or not, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Well, another quote that I love that you wrote, it said, like attracts like. You encourage people to surround yourself with people that have traits you want because they grow like a fungus. And like magnets, the most persistent people are drawn together. And here's what I love about that, because I have been doing this show for a long time, Nutmeg Chatter, along with Nutmeg Junction, and I will go to a play. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize you were in this play. I'll go to see a band. Oh, I didn't realize that your band was playing tonight. So wherever I go, it's like what I like, I see the people that I work with, because we're such a small community, all the creative people, and we all get along, we all support each other, and I think it's great.
Yeah, we definitely, it is strange. Like, the more we meet each other, the more we keep finding more and more like us. And it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, in my research that you mentioned how much you hate being in the spotlight, which you talked about a little bit, and you love working behind the scenes. But here's what I think. Without even realizing it, I think that was a brilliant move, because knowing the process behind the scenes makes you a much better performer in front of the camera. And I think that probably because you've mentioned that you were even a security guard, you worked on the cameras, and you worked, what else did you do? Lighting technician, sound technician. But I think when you do that, then you sort of realize everything that goes on and all the people it takes to make a great show. So now that you're an actor, it makes you a better performer.
Wow, I hadn't looked at it that way. I do know that it makes me much more conscientious of what everybody else around me goes through and how hard it is to do what they do. And it's funny because acting was the last thing. Out of all those things you could do, acting was the very last thing that I was like, I don't know. I'm dyslexic. I say things backwards sometimes. I was surprised that this worked out as well as it did.
You know what I think you should start doing is, I think that I actually started doing it myself, motivational speaking.
That is something I have always wanted to do ever since I was in college, and I started watching motivational speakers and things like that. I think that this is something, sometimes I do this on YouTube just because I have to say something.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that I'll probably do after I have several books out and I'm like, look, I have arrived. Like, that need to feel validated before you have the right to, and it's not true, but you still feel it on the inside. Like, you need to validate your existence first.
Well, I think you'd be great. I just started doing it recently, and my message is never give up. And I always talk about getting out of the comfort zone. I always say, you know what, something that you're uncomfortable with today, try it now. Tomorrow you're going to be comfortable with it. Tomorrow, try something new, and then eventually it's just going to become second nature. And I have had so many people come up to me like, Rich, I really want to thank you. Without you, I never would have tried this. And I'll give you an example. I did stand-up comedy for several years, and I have cerebral palsy. And I was on stage and I saw somebody in a wheelchair and I saw him say, "Finally!" And I started laughing.
Yes.
So afterwards, we became friends on Facebook, and he said, "Can I call you?" This was about a month or two later. And I said, "Yeah, definitely." He goes, "I just want to thank you. Ever since I met you, I've been doing comedy. I've been going to like 3 or 4 different cities. I never used to do this. You're the one that really made me want to do it. So gave me inspiration." So I think that your message is the same as that, and I think you could help a lot of people with what you're saying.
Oh, thank you, Rich. I will definitely take that into consideration.
All right, well, Nutmeg Chatter presents the Claus Corner. We'll be back with singer, musician, author, and voiceover actor Tiffy McKay right after this. We are back with Nutmeg Chatter presents the Claus Corner. I have been speaking with the multi-talented Tiffy McKay. Tiffy, once again, welcome back to the show. It's great talking to you.
Thank you, Rich.
All right, so you were also a filmmaker.
Oh, yeah.
This is a two-part question. Who are some of your biggest influences growing up, and who are some of your biggest influences now?
Biggest influences. I'd have to say George Lucas
Yes.
right off the bat. And I'm surprised every time I learn something new about the process that he's gone through and the way his thinking evolved over time. And he was just such a pioneer as a sci-fi fan.
Well, also, since you're into marketing, he's a pioneer there as well, because he is the first person to say, you know what, I want a pay cut. I want part of the merchandise. And they're like, what are you, crazy? Nobody buys merchandise for movies. And look what happened. 1977, everybody thought he was nuts. Like, come on, who's going to buy a Luke Skywalker doll? Well, guess what? There's a lot of people.
Brilliant.
So, yeah, not only was he a great pioneer with the whole side, and I love the story. Maybe you could tell a little bit better than me, but how did Star Wars come about? He couldn't get the rights to, I think it was The Shadow or one of the movies. So he said, you know what, I'm just going to create my own space
I did
movie.
not know about that part.
Yeah.
Most of what I know about what he did and what basically the team of people that he put together did was based on the technical side of how to make it happen. So the actual creation of how to get ships to look like they're flying across the screen when they did not have the technology back then. In fact, so many people were like, that can't be done. And because all the quote-unquote experts said it couldn't be done, he went to novices and said, hey, I want to make this happen. And they were like, okay. And the best part was that they didn't know enough to know that it supposedly couldn't happen, like that it couldn't be done. So sometimes ignorance can be a great tool.
Yeah. Well, I agree. And one of his best friends is Steven Spielberg. And he said, I'm 25 years old. I'm filming in the ocean with a fake shark. He goes, if I was too young and too dumb to realize I shouldn't be doing this. Now I'd probably film it in a studio in a tank. And that's what made the movie so great, because it looked real, it was authentic, it was in the ocean. And the best part was because it didn't work, the shark kept on sinking. You couldn't see it as much as you wanted to, and that made the suspense even more.
It ended up adding to the film. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so you never know. So just as you and I have been talking about, just never give up, follow your dream, don't let anybody stop you. But I had the opportunity to work with you in the film, The Company That You Keep, which is part of the 48-hour film project. Tell me a little bit about that.
So The Company You Keep was written on a Friday night after we got the specs for the 48-hour film project for 2019. You get a character, you get a prop, you get a line, and then each group gets a different genre. And we actually had J. Timothy Quirk on as our writer. I'm so grateful we did, because he writes insanely fast.
Yes.
So within a couple of hours, we had a script. And while he was writing this script, we were out at thrift stores buying costumes to go with the characters that we'd come up with. And the next day we had one day to shoot everything. And then we had overnight and the next morning to get it edited, get all the sound synced up, and it was crazy. And this is the third time that I've done it, but it's the first time that I was like, yeah, we're going to run our team this year.
Yeah,
I had no idea what I was getting into.
But once again, because of that, I think that's what made such a great movie. I got to play your humble troubadour. I had so much fun doing that. And the story, well, tell my listeners a little bit about the story, because I love how he incorporated everybody that wanted to be in the film.
Oh,
he
my
had a part
goodness.
for everybody, and the way he did it was ingenious.
So the overarching story was a grandfather coming to spend time with his grandson while the parents went out to have like a date night or something. And we had, I think, 8 cast members who were available. And because J. Timothy Quirk is so phenomenal, he actually found a way to work all 8 cast members in, which is like unheard of also for a 48-hour film. And we ended up using some VR gear to bring us into a video game. So we had 2 different locations that we filmed at, actually 3 different locations we filmed at, and we wrapped all 8 characters in there, and they weren't just extras. Everybody had lines, everybody had a purpose, and it was phenomenal.
Oh, it was great. I loved it. I was part of the VR world as the humble troubadour, and I just had a great time, and hopefully, if you do it next year, you remember me, because I'd love to be in it.
I wonder if you search YouTube, you might be able to find The Company You Keep.
Yeah.
Like, the entire film's up there.
Let's just say it's probably, a 10-minute movie. I was there from 7 in the morning, and I didn't get home till about 9 at night. So it was just a lot of work, but a lot of fun, too. Met a lot of great people. And
super rewarding to have
Yes.
something completed after one weekend.
yeah, and you saw it in the theater. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah, we had one showing down in the New Haven area. It was incredibly
Did it
fun.
go over well?
By midway through the film, the entire audience was laughing. By the time we got to the end, like, people were missing parts. They couldn't even hear everything because they were laughing so hard. And our genre was slapstick. So mission accomplished.
All right. Well, congratulations on that. Now, being a writer, have you ever written or helped write a script for the movie? Any of the 48-hour film project?
Not for the 48-hour film project, but my best friend Sammy Ann Fontaine and I originally got into film because we were writing a spoof for Stargate Atlantis. This was going on like almost 15 years ago. And it was due to we didn't know what couldn't be done. And we were trying to write a 45-minute episode with people who had never written a script before. So I think we got about 8 pages through, which is only 8 minutes. But we did actually film a 2-minute hook for it. And it was surprisingly not terrible.
Seems to be a running theme throughout the show. Ignorance is bliss.
It can be. It really can be.
So what is next for the multi-talented Tiffy McKay?
Next, I'm using creating coloring pages as a way to get used to digital art, because I'm going to be illustrating books down in the future because we don't have enough illustrators and it just takes so long to illustrate a single book. So awkwardpauspublishing.com if you're ever looking for a place for illustrators, or if the other way around, if you're an illustrator looking for a place. But yeah, so my next foray is to work on my art skills and get that up to par. Back up to all my writing skills.
All right. So any last words for anyone looking to find their way in the creative world?
I would say if you're working on something creatively, go for it. Like, do it. If you're working on a book, finish it. Don't worry about whether or not it's good. That's not the point, because most of the real work comes during the editing process.
Exactly. I like that. Well, Tiffy, it's been great speaking with you. And very quickly, where can people find you?
Oh, you can find me at awkwardpauspublishing.com or anywhere on the internet as Tiffy McKay.
All right. Well, Tiffy, it was great talking to you. That wraps up another edition of Nutmeg Chatter Presents the Claus Corner. A very special thanks goes to my extremely talented and extremely humble guest, Tiffy McKay. This will definitely not be the last time that we hear from her. I would also like to thank you, the listener, for tuning in every week. Enjoy your day, everyone.